1 minute to go. All right, I show 9:30.
To order the regular board meeting of the Metropolitan, Western Municipal Water District. Metropolitan's here. Well, yeah.
Go for it. Let's try their board meeting.
Could we? No, no. We'll stick with ours. Tammy, would you please do a roll call?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Director Torres.
Here.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Dinstedt.
Good morning, I am present.
Good morning. Director Roten.
Here.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Risby.
Here.
Thank you. Good morning. President Gardner.
I am here as well.
Great. President Gardner, you do have a quorum today.
Okay, thank you very much. This is the time for any members of the public who would like to address the board on anything that is not on our agenda but is within our jurisdiction.
Director Gardner, could we
Oops,
please
I'm
do
skipping
the
the
Pledge
flag
of
salute
Allegiance?
again. Let's back up and then we'll talk. Would you please all rise, and who do we have doing the pledge? We have Brent.
We have
no?
Armando Martinez
Armando,
is here,
yes.
Operations Tech 1 from production. Armando, thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for having me here. When you guys are ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very cool.
Thank you, Armando.
Armando, you want to tell us how long you've been here at Western and where you're working?
Yeah, I've been here on and off for about almost 3 years. I think it's like, yeah, I'm going on 4 years, but I'm newly 6-7 months full-time with the distribution department. So far, so good. I'm still here.
We appreciate you being here,
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me.
coming to join us this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys.
When Armando says he's been on and off here, he doesn't quit and then come back. He's been a part-time employee in a couple of different areas. And we're very fortunate that we found a full-time position for him so that we can make him a permanent employee. But he's a good example of kind of our training ground, and it worked out where it works very well to bring in these part-time employees and find out what their personalities are like and what their work habits are like, and then bring them onto the team full-time. So Armando, thank you.
Thank you, Armando.
Thanks very much. Okay, now, public comments. Is there anyone in the room who would like to address the board?
President Gardner, I have received no requests to speak, and we received no written comments for this meeting.
Okay, we will close public comments then and move on to our presentation. Craig, would you like to introduce Mr. Goshi?
I would love to. So we're very fortunate today to have Brandon Goshi here from Metropolitan. I'll read this part because I don't know what he actually does at Metropolitan. He's just been around for a long time. So Brandon started at Met in 1994.
That's correct.
Must have been 6 years old when he started. He is the manager of resource planning and development in the Water Resource Management Group. Brandon is responsible for water supply and demand planning for Metropolitan's 5,200 square mile service area. His responsibilities include developing regional water supply and demand projections, defining approaches and strategies for managing uncertainty, and recommending resource implementation and operational strategies. I'm glad Brandon's here today. He may have PTSD from the last time he was here. You may recall that he was the unfortunate person that got to talk about the gloom and doom of the drought and potential met allocations and what we're going to do to get through another dry year. So I thought it was only appropriate to bring him back and let him talk about the good problems that Metropolitan's going to have with a wet year. So Brandon, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Craig, for that introduction, Mr. President, members of the board. It is a pleasure to be here, as Craig pointed out. I think I picked up the nickname Dr. Doom or something the last time here. So I was ecstatic to get the invitation to come back and present what's going on this year in terms of water supply. Little background on Metropolitan, just in case. We're the primary water wholesaler for Southern California and our 26 member agencies. Those member agencies, like Western, serve about 185 retail purveyors of water within our service area. There's about 19 million people, 5,200 square miles, and a demand of about 3 to 4 million acre feet, depending on the year. And Metropolitan has historically served about half of that demand. Where does that water come from for Southern California? Locally, in the Metropolitan Water District, you can see that area. Local supplies comprise about half of the water supplies for Southern California. That's inclusive of the Los Angeles Aqueduct and its watershed. You can see in kind of the Southern Sierra there. Metropolitan was built to, or came together to build the Colorado River Aqueduct. 20% of the Southern California supplies come from the Colorado River Aqueduct historically, and the other 30% come from the State Water Project, whose watershed is in Northern California. So let's jump right into what is this year looking like in terms of water supply. And so this graphic basically is just a fancy way of showing the atmospheric rivers or the storms that have come to California before, or come to California this year. And it's been quite impressive. I think the total of what they call atmospheric rivers nowadays, back in 1994, they used to call them storms. Right. Now they're atmospheric rivers. I remember about 15, 20 years ago, a scientist telling me that California generally needs about 5 to 7 atmospheric rivers or storms to have a normal water year. That's about what you get. I think we got about 14 at this point, and so that leads into why the snowpack looks so good. The snow has stretched, the storms have stretched over to the watersheds that feed the Colorado River, so I just wanted to start with that. With all of the issues that have been going on with the Colorado River, with the strained water supplies, with the storage levels in Lake Mead and Lake Powell decreasing, this year was a very welcome reprieve from what's been going on over the last 22 years. So there's near record snowpack in the upper Colorado River watershed, which is the piece that feeds the Colorado River flow. So currently, they're 160% of April 1 normal. And so all of the numbers I'm going to talk about, they're based on April 1 normal, is really saying that's what is expected for a normal year. So, 1.6 times or 160% of that normal figure. It's like having more than a year and a half of snow, average year of snow, which is, really impressive there. In terms of Northern California, I wanted to start with precip because we keep hearing about how wet it really is this year. And in Northern California, from a precip perspective, it's really not record rainfall. If you look at this graphic shows precipitation, so rainfall at the aid station index, which is the index of stations up in Northern California. The blue shaded area kind of shows the range of the minimum to maximum rainfall that has been measured at those stations in history. And so you can see the driest was 17.1 inches. The wettest is covered up on my screen, and so I can't tell you what that is. Hopefully you can see that. And the average is 53.2. You can see that this year to date, there you go, thank you, 94.7, so an impressive number there. This year has been 59.5 inches of rainfall, so it's above average for the year, but far from the wettest conditions. So when you hear, oh, this is unprecedented rainfall, it's not, but it is very wet, and it is a big change. So what did all the atmospheric rivers do then? Well, no, that's okay. All right. It really showed itself in snowpack. Okay, so this graphic shows the near record, and I think that's going to be broken very shortly, but the near record snowpack for the Northern Sierra watershed. Okay, so that's 192% of that April 1 normal, so that's nearly 2 years of average year snow. That's pretty impressive, 57.7 inches, and you can see the graphic below that 57.7 inches shows, the blue area shows average snowpack building up through April and then running off through the runoff year. You can see last water year, the white line, which peaked under 20 inches. And so the impressive amount that the orange line has been to date and the fact that it's not running off yet. So that snow is in the snowpack, waiting to run off and waiting to be managed into water supply. And it's 2 years, basically 2 years of average snowfall. And so that is very helpful. Surprisingly, Northern California is the lowest, lowest of the high. You can see this graphic shows central and southern Sierras in terms of the snowpack. And so while northern snowpack was 192%, the central region was 237% of normal. And the south, which coincidentally is the watershed that feeds the Los Angeles Aqueduct, a significant amount of water supply for Southern California, is 300% of normal. So they are blowing away records in the snowpack, particularly in the LA Aqueduct watershed and in the Owens Valley. And so 3 average years of snow up in there. And so they're very concerned about runoff and flooding and the impact that that might have on infrastructure. So has this water been captured, or is it being managed? So I talked a little bit about the rainfall. That's really all the water that could have been captured at this point, right? Because the snowpack is still frozen and waiting to run off. And so this graphic shows Lake Oroville and since October. And the blue area that's marked current year storage shows the amount of water that was in Lake Oroville. And you can see it was in dangerously low levels going into last year, hence Dr. Doom, right? And when it started raining, there was a significant amount of rain, and there was flooding. I'm not saying that there wasn't flooding. I'm just saying that it wasn't record flooding. You can see that a great deal of water was captured in Oroville to where the storage was below 1 million acre feet. Now it's up near 3 million acre feet of water in that reservoir. And that's the major reservoir that captures water to deliver to the State Water Project. And so that's a hugely important statistic or hugely important information when it comes to projecting what our State Water Project allocation is going to be. So that's about 1.8 million acre feet again since those storms began. And so that's impressive. I think what's even more impressive is that that reservoir is used for storm and flooding protection. And so out of that same reservoir, you can see even though it wasn't full, it had reached what they call the flood encroachment or the flood protection range of the reservoir. And so since March 10th, the Department of Water Resources has been releasing large amounts of water from that, from Oroville Reservoir. And so since March 10th, there has been close to 900,000 acre feet of water released. Think about that number just for a moment. 900,000 acre feet is 200,000 acre feet more than Metropolitan was allocated from the State Water Project for the last 3 years.
Wow.
And that's just flood releases. That's just flood releases. The rest of the water supply is building up in that reservoir storage, and they're holding it there until the rest of the snow comes. And so this water actually, you might hear, oh, it's being wasted, things like that. It's not being wasted this year because Lake Oroville will be full after this runoff season. It'll be full probably by the end of May, meaning the system has captured as much as it's going to be able to capture. How about exports for the State Water Project? This is San Luis Reservoir, which is downstream of the Delta, and so gets water from the exports that are pumped out of the Delta into the State Water Project. And you can see in this graphic that San Luis Reservoir has been able, the state project has been able to export water, put it into San Luis Reservoir to where its share of the capacity, and actually the total capacity, is close to full. Okay, so that means that the Department of Water Resources has been able to capture pretty much the maximum amount of water, or export the maximum amount of water that they could basically to this point. And you can see that that is about 700,000 acre feet, 690, since those storms began. So the conditions in the Delta have been good enough to export water, pump that water, and store it in San Luis Reservoir. So how does that translate into water supply? So, again, the takeaway there's a lot of water, right? In the watersheds, it's a tremendous amount of water, records in terms of snow. So what does that mean for water supply? You may have heard that Metropolitan, in fact, we had a press event last week at Diamond Valley, that we're storing water at Diamond Valley for the first time since 2019.
Wow.
And I think a lot of folks have asked, why did you wait so long? It's been raining, it's been snowing, why are you only storing water? It's because California's water, when it comes to the State Water Project, works in kind of two phases. First, the major projects, the State Water Project, have to capture that water to build up the storage, like I showed you, so that they can allocate it to its contractors like Metropolitan. So we have only recently been allocated an amount of water that we can be comfortable storing at this point. So that's why we're just starting now. It's because that water has just been allocated. So this graphic basically shows that a lot of water, and I showed you Oroville before, but also in Lake Shasta, which feeds the Central Valley Project, have captured and improved their storage conditions a great deal. So that has translated now into State Water Project allocation. This graphic, just for historical reference, shows a range of allocations that Metropolitan and the contractors have received from the State Water Project. And so you can see back in 2006, there was 100% allocation. Metropolitan's contract for water is 1.91 million acre feet. So in a full allocation year, that's the amount of water that gets allocated to Metropolitan, 1.9 million acre feet. But you can see that that varied and hadn't come close to that 100% for years and years. And I'd focus your attention here on the right-hand side of the graphic. In 2020, 2021, and 2022, we had extremely low state project allocations. So a 5% allocation is only 100,000 acre feet, right? For a contract that has 1.9 million acre feet. That's a very, very small amount of water, and that explains why we've been in emergency conditions, in shortage conditions, why our storage has been depleted coming up to this point. Going into the year, the initial allocation for this year was 5% also, right? So in December, the department said, we're gonna allocate 5% of your contract. The storms happened in January, and that allocation was increased to 30%. So 30% is, roughly a break-even point, and that's why we weren't able to start storing water yet at that point. After another update, it was increased another 5%, so only another 100,000. Okay, so while all that snow and rain was accumulating and while all that water was building up in storage and that was being exported, it wasn't being allocated to the contractors. So only 2 weeks ago was the allocation greatly increased to reflect those hydrologic conditions to 75%. And so now that's a significant amount of water, right? Now we're talking, here's a lot of water, and now we need to get busy storing that water because we can order it, schedule it, deliver it, and start delivering it into our storage, which again had been depleted. Is it over yet in terms of allocation? Remember, I kind of hearkened to, there's so much snow in the snowpack, and that means it hasn't run off yet. When that water runs off, the system will basically top off. And so some of the studies show that that allocation could go to 100% this year. And so we may have 1.9 million acre feet of our
Brandon,
contract
I'm
amount
not
to work
saying
with.
that we're competitive at Western, but there's a lot of competition internally about what the allocation will go to. So I appreciate your comment about 100%.
We would never do that, Director Denstead. And
Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so all of those numbers are in play, and numbers below 75% aren't in play at this point. So this, again, is an impressive year, but I think I just wanted to point out that it also points to some of the issues on the State Water Project, that it does take a record snowpack year to be able to reach 100%, given all of the regulatory and environmental constraints that are on that system. So that really, we should really keep that in mind, that that system continues to be strained, even though we're seeing supplies like this year. This next slide talks about something we call Article 21, and I think, you know, we could get allocated 100% of our contract, 1.911 million acre feet. But I showed you that graphic that San Luis Reservoir is actually full right now. And so what that basically means is that the department can't export any more water from the project at this time and put it into San Luis Reservoir for later delivery because there's no room. Okay? When that happens, they declare to the contractors that water under Article 21 of the State Water Contract, which is interruptible water, is available. And so all of the water they've been able to pump since San Luis filled has been being made available as Article 21 or interruptible water. And so that is water that's in addition to your allocation. And so now we're talking about water being made available, again, when San Luis is full, when those supplies are available to be exported from the Delta, and when a contractor can increase their demands and put that water into storage, right? Because that's really the only way you can increase your scheduled demands. So these Article 21 supplies were made available in late March, and we've been allocated 83,000 acre feet so far, and we've been able to take that and put that into storage. So I had an update on that, and it looks like I didn't get that. Just last night, another 43,000 acre feet of Article 21 was allocated to Met for next week. And so we're expecting to be able to manage that. And that gets us to about 125,000 acre feet of Article 21 water that's available over and above the projected 1.9 million acre feet of water that we'd be expecting from the state. So, you know, 125,000 acre feet, that's more water than we got in the whole allocation, again, in 2022 or 2021. So an impressive amount of water to be able to help us with our issues. So what does that mean in terms of water supply and demand balance? Here's the Colorado River supply, and I did talk about this, and this hasn't changed. We're not expecting to be able to divert a full aqueduct because of the issues that are continuing to go on in the Colorado. Those storage levels will probably increase in Lake Mead and Lake Powell, but that's not going to change the outlook that we have on the river. So less than 1 million acre feet of Colorado River supply, but a substantial state water project supply allocation. And again, could I move that? How would I move that?
Yeah.
Thanks. I forgot to memorize all the numbers. 2.36 million acre feet of supplies versus a demand that's currently estimated about 1.4 million acre feet. That supply versus the demand gets about 940,000 acre feet of water over and above our demands that we're going to be trying to manage and put into storage this year. And that's at the current allocation. Again, that could go up another 25% of our contract, or up to 1.9 million acre feet. So where is that water going to go? This graphic shows kind of a grouping of some of the storage, or the storage portfolio that we have available to store water. And you can see the beginning of year balances in those reservoirs. So for the reservoirs that can feed our State Water Project dependent areas, those were tremendously low, so that you see that State Water Project carryover storage, the State Water Project flexible storage, those were practically empty going into this year. Our out-of-region banking was also getting close to empty when you recognize that it's a limited amount of water that we can take out in a given year. So we are going to store to the point where we think we are going to be able to get our storage to about 3.18 million acre feet. Theoretically, we're prioritizing that State Water Project dependent area storage, one, because it was so empty, two, because what last year showed is that they're highly vulnerable to low water allocations if there's no storage available. So we're going to be able to fill up that State Water Project carryover, so now that'll be almost 300,000 acre feet there. Our State Water Project flexible storage will be about 220,000 acre feet there. And also our outer region banking, getting that up to about 480,000 acre feet. The rest will go into in-region storage like Diamond Valley, and you can see a big improvement. There's the dashed lines there that show the beginning of year storage levels, so you can see the amount of water that's being added there. And so this shows where we're going to manage that storage, and obviously we'll be looking for maximizing the agreements that we have with our local agencies so that you have an opportunity to maximize your water resources and your storage, given that this water is available as well. So where does that put our overall storage? You can see this graphic shows our storage levels, and it's our emergency storage at the bottom. You see, so we're reserving that amount of storage that you see at the bottom there. It's about 700,000 acre feet at this time. And then our dry year storage over and above that. And you can see from this graphic, we had about 3.2 million acre feet going into 2020. We depleted that regional storage down to 2.3 million acre feet. We'll be able to return that back to the 3.2. So we're going to be able to reverse the impacts of the 3-year drought with this 1 year's allocation. And that's a huge reset. It's a huge relief, and it's going to make us more reliable over the next 3 years. Director Denstead.
Question.
Oh, absolutely.
For the 3.2 million acre feet that were depleted and drawn down on, how long did that take?
You can see from this graphic, it was at 3.2 in 2020. So those two extreme dry years, 2021 and 2022, went down over 900,000 acre feet, close to 1 million acre feet. So over that 2-year period, that's what we're able to reset here. And so when I say that makes us more reliable, that means we could go through the same kind of devastating dry period and make it for another 2 years through that with that storage, and then end up where we were at the beginning of this year. And so, 2 years might not sound like a lot, but that was also a pretty extreme situation as well that we were dealing with. So, Director Rizvi.
Do you have plans? That, what is the plan for that?
Well, so the plan would be we would utilize some of this storage that we're able to reset this year, right? That's our normal kind of dry year plans. Then we would look at some of the programs that we developed during that extreme dry year period. Some of the agencies' ability to shift water. Western was one of the agencies that was able to take water from our operation of DVL to Mills instead of taking State Water Project water. At some point, and I can't tell you what point that is, we would consider turning those programs back on to preserve the storage that we have saved earlier. Presumably it would be earlier, that's our lesson learned. But practically speaking, it's hard to tell when you're going into an extreme drought condition like that. So we had a number of drought and shortage actions that I wanted, at MET, and I wanted to kind of clarify where we're at today, given the water supply. So 3 main areas. The first thing we did in April was our board removed the water shortage emergency condition. This was just last month. The water shortage emergency condition that had been declared for the State Water Project dependent area in April of 2022. For that 7+ months, the State Water Project dependent area was in essentially a Water Code 350 state declared emergency by our board. And so that was removed. Our board also ended the Emergency Water Conservation Program for that same State Water Project dependent area. And if you recall, there were mandatory outdoor restrictions and enforcement and penalty enforced volumetric limits on the supplies that those agencies could take. So very stringent draconian measures were removed as a result of this additional water supply. One of the things that is still in effect is something called a regional drought emergency that was declared for our entire service area. And I think there was some talk at our board about whether that's appropriately named at this point, because it's not the drought per se, but it's our ongoing water challenges. And so the struggle is communicating the need for continued water use efficiency programs and using water wisely to manage the oncoming, water supply issues that can come from both the state project and the Colorado River. So where we are with that is that that emergency stays in place, or that regional drought declaration stays in place, and it really calls for agencies to be consistent with the governor's drought emergency, which last week a lot of the restrictions were lessened under the governor's drought emergency, so those translate into lessened restrictions on our agencies as well. But we could really use agency coordination and your help in continuing to communicate that this is a reset, this is a reprieve, but this is in no means a solution to the long-term challenges that we're going to continue to face on the Colorado River and the state if dry conditions continue. So this is my conclusion slide. I think this is a great opportunity to reflect on the extreme variable weather that California has had in the past, had this year, and will continue to have in the future. You'll hear words like weather whiplash a lot. The water is going to go from dry to wet. It's done that in the past. It's going to continue to do that in the future. And it's going to be, it may be in extremes like we saw this year, right? None of our other uncertainties, regulations, legal, environmental, any of those uncertainties have gone away with this, right? What's really gone away is the dire conditions that our water resources and storage are in. So water use efficiency remains to be critical, and we need to keep communicating that while maintaining a credible message, right? So I believe that those challenges are real, and I believe that water use efficiency is important as a baseline towards using and developing water resources in the future. We shouldn't hide that message behind some ongoing drought condition that actually doesn't exist today. It's for other reasons. And so, we're going to continue to try and reinforce our water resources through smart investments, such as Pure Water Southern California, right? So increasing the amount of supplies that are available that help us deal with these changing conditions that we see in the future. And with that, be happy to take questions, or additional questions.
Okay. Are there additional questions from board members?
I just want to state for the record that Brandon, I don't think that you're Dr. Doom. So, okay, just want to state that. I've had a number of conversations with you and appreciate all of the information that you've shared with me and the knowledge that I've been able to get from you. Here's a question. So, and I'm not sure which slide it was, and I was trying to look through my packet and I couldn't find it, but I think it was the 940 acre feet.
940,000, yeah.
Yeah, right, 940,000, sorry.
No,
I'll
that's-
add the couple zeros on there.
I don't even know what
Right, no,
Right.
for sure. Is that the max that is available to store water in at this point? I mean, or is that another incremental amount that we can be hopeful for, or where does that actually sit? And I'll tell you the question that I really want to know is, has Metropolitan taken into consideration all of the agencies, not just Met Storage, but all of the agencies' maximum capacity for storage? Because we just had a conversation at Engineering Committee on Monday in regard to the Inland Empire and what we have available, which was 137,000 acre feet of storage that we had. So,
Well, that's in
Just in-
SARCUP.
just in SARCUP.
Brandon's aware of SARCUP.
Right.
And so we had a discussion, and what directors lean to is, and let me fill in another piece of the puzzle, is Metropolitan's having a meeting next week so that all the member agencies
Right.
can come up and sit with Metropolitan and try and figure out and be ready for this gush of water that's going to come out of the system this summer.
right,
So
no,
it's
because,
not just the 137 in SARCUP, it's all the other groundwater storage capacity in the whole
Right.
Southern California area that we're concerned about.
Yeah.
right, no, and my concern is that, the conversations that I've had, rainfall is great, and that is happening, you know, spacing of storms, whatever we want to call them at this point. It's rain, folks, it's rain. But to the point of some concerns that are happening, especially up and down the state, especially where the snowpack is really heavy right now, and it's sitting up there because the weather has maintained its temperatures, and we're not having the snow melt that we have. We're talking about significant snowpack melt coming, because we know temperatures are going to rise as the summer starts to approach, and then we're talking about flood concerns. Right, in areas. So they've got to have capacity in there, and releases are going, and so we're kind of watching all this water go away.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious, you know, what is our ultimate take from everybody?
So let's see if I can unpack that a little bit. So 940,000 is the amount that we're expecting to be able to store with the 75% state water project allocation and the Article 21 water that we've gotten to date. Okay, so that's the current expectation. And so we have places to put that water. We're expecting the allocation to increase to 100%, right? So that's going to be another 25%, which is 500,000 acre feet more. So that's going to push that number up towards 1.4 million acre feet. We don't have that kind of storage capability to manage that kind of water. And so that's one of the reasons why we're having that meeting tomorrow with the agencies, is because we want to uncover any kind of unspoken water management programs that we might be able to do with the member agencies. And keep in mind that the local agencies too, because of the local rainfall, are having trouble taking water into, say, their groundwater basins or their surface reservoirs, because they're already maximizing that too. And then the last comment I wanted to make on what you said is, it will look like a lot of water is being wasted when that snow starts melting. There's a lot of snow, and that's going to be a lot of flow in the rivers. You know, really what it exposes is that for the state water project, the ability to capture that water has always been on the small side.
Yeah.
Lake Oroville is only 3.5 million acre feet of total storage capacity for total project demands of 4.23, you know, at full allocation. And so even though that water is going to be running out, the reservoirs are going to be full. And so there's not really anything else that you could do about it at this
Right.
point, except for increase the size of
So-
storage, right?
So here's my end game, right? Because this is where I was going to land with this question, and you know it. So, and maybe this is unfair to ask you, but sites. So let's talk about sites. What could we have captured and stored had that been in play?
Right, so I don't know what the maximum inflow capacity of sites is, but I imagine that if it was in place, the maximum inflow capacity to that reservoir, given whatever regulatory or environmental constraints is on that inflow, would have been captured this year. And I would imagine that's substantial, since it's, you know, what is it, a three plus? Yeah. Right. So it would be hundreds of thousands of acre feet of inflow in a year like this. You know, I think it's a good opportunity to point out the other issue with, you see the state water project reservoirs and Lake Shasta, they're able to fill a lot quicker because those are on-stream reservoirs. They're actually dams on rivers, so the flow comes directly into them. All of Metropolitan's reservoirs are off-stream reservoirs. So in Diamond Valley's case, we have pipeline capacity issues bringing that water in. You know, we have a good deal of it because of inland feeder, our investment in inland feeder, but it's still limited to, say, 1,000 CFS. 1,000 CFS is a lot when you're building a pipeline. It's not a lot when you're trying to manage this amount of water in this amount of time.
And for my colleagues who were not on the board at the time that inland feeder was being built, can you talk about the size of that? I want folks to understand the size of that pipeline. It's big.
I think, and Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 19-foot diameter pipeline that basically comes from Silverwood down directly into DVL. It's gravity fed, and when DVL levels are at a certain level that allows for the maximum hydraulics, I think it's 1,000 CFS that can flow from that pipeline. And so 1,000 CFS is 2,000 acre feet a day, 60,000 acre feet a month.
Yeah, it was quite impressive when the pipeline was being built at our former site location, we actually had a segment of the pipe, Derek, remember they backed it up on a truck for us to look at a piece of that pipe. It's impressive. I mean, you can drive a truck through it.
Yeah.
It's an impressive piece to know that that is filled and moving water
Yeah.
at that flow. I mean, it's an impressive thing to see. So I didn't expect that. When you say it and actually see it and stand it, I don't know if we have a picture at some point that somebody could dig out of the archives, but it was rather impressive, and people need to understand that's a lot of water flowing.
Yeah, that was actually one of the more impressive tours that I've been on, is during the construction when they were using the tunnel boring machine and going through, we were able to go in there, and that, it makes you appreciate, every time I see things like that, it makes me appreciate what agencies like ours do to provide water supply
Absolutely.
to our consumers.
No, thank you for being here today. It's very informative. I appreciate our conversations and the knowledge that you've shared with me, so thank you very much.
You as well.
Director Risby,
I'm good, thank you so much.
Director Torres.
No, I'm sure you want to get home.
I'm fine, thank you.
No, this
Thank
was
you again
great.
for having me.
This was great, thank you.
Director Roten.
At the very beginning, I think I heard this correctly. You said since March 10th, 900,000 acre feet has been released from Oroville. Is that correct? So did we capture any of that downstream, or where did that all go?
Yeah, so some of that would have been exported and put into San Luis Reservoir,
Okay.
but San Luis is full.
Right.
And so the marginal amount of that is probably very small. And so the rest of it would have contributed to the environment in terms of ocean outflow. And that's where that
Nice
would
way
go.
to put it.
Great way to put it.
Right, Dr. Doom, really?
That's great. Okay.
We're helping keep the ocean from becoming too saline.
There you go. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So,
Welcome.
thank you. I have one question. Some of the slides that you showed are not in our packet. Can we get our staff to give them to us? Do you have
Absolutely.
any issue with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And those, just to be clear, those were updates that I got yesterday,
Yeah.
and so I just wanted to bring them.
Not a complaint, it's just
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
great slides and I'd like to have them.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, they're yours.
And yeah, kind of close with an observation. It wasn't that long ago, I was really worried about, will we have enough water? Now I'm worried about if we get an early snow melt, not only will we have flooding issues, but we're going to lose water that we are hoping to be able to move other places and store. So there's just a shift in what the worry is, but there's still a worry. There's always a worry about water.
Right.
And as you said, all of this runoff now, and if we get an early snow melt, it will illustrate it even further. If we had more capture, transport, and storage capability at the state level, we could make better use of this, and we're looking at storage that will carry us through 3 dry years, but we get more than 3 dry years in a row on a somewhat regular basis in California. And this just illustrates that even if you've got plenty of water, we do not manage it adequately yet, and we need to keep working on that.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And the message, throughout my entire career in planning on a regional level like this, it's very difficult to keep your eye on the ball when the conditions are changing so much.
Yeah.
Because last year, you wouldn't find a single person saying, what we really need to do is build more storage for those wet years. No, you're right, even at Met internally, there are folks, that haven't seen this kind of swing in water supply. They think in terms of hundreds of thousands of acre feet for the allocation, not in terms of millions. And so, the infrastructure and the storage, being able to manage that, it's a huge investment. And it takes a large investment. Like I said, the 1,000 CFS inlet feeder, or even the 800,000 acre foot Diamond Valley Lake, is really not that large when it comes to the amount of water that this watershed could put out, right? And could be available to us. And so trying to manage that and make the proper investments going forward and keep that conversation going. That is the challenge.
It is. So,
Uh,
all right. Thank you very much.
I have a,
Yes, sir.
I have a question also for Mr. Goshi.
All right.
I would like to make a comment first to compliment Met because it may seem odd, Brandon's talking about, hey, we removed the drought emergency just in April. It seems like, why didn't you do that in December? But he talks about that the allocation wasn't made at the state level. So even though we were all watching it snow and rain like crazy, officially, they didn't know that the state did not determine that they were going to send water through the system. So Met couldn't react until they got the 75% allocation. So it kind of puts Metropolitan behind the ball from the very start. Now, I will compliment them for a very quick reaction to, charge this all through their board and to put in place planning activities to really maximize the capture of this. So thank you very much, Brandon. We appreciate you being here. I can't let you leave, though, without commenting on your last couple slides where Metropolitan's talking points are about, well, the drought's not over really because there's a systemic water supply planning and infrastructure deficit. And, our agency has been very vocal about we need to get to the state and talk to the state and get the state to invest in infrastructure. You look at the 900,000 acre feet that has been released. If you had another reservoir upstream of Oroville or downstream of Oroville, you would have captured more water. And that's what we need as a state. And so I would certainly encourage you to take back the message that we need Met's support on California Water for All and solve the water crisis. We're here to advocate for exactly what you're talking about in those slides that we need. And so we certainly hope Metropolitan will come along and help us advocate for a better planning process at the state and better investment at the state. We're very happy with what's happening in the Met service area and what the local agencies are doing, but we got to change the investment strategy at the state. So thank you very much for coming.
Understood. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, brings us to the consent calendar. Does anyone have an item they would like to pull from the consent calendar?
Move the consent calendar?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Everybody is happy, doesn't need to pull anything?
No.
Okay. Would you please call the roll then?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dennstedt?
Aye.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Do we have anything to add to the agenda, Mr. Miller?
No, we do not.
Okay. Our action items, the first one is money. We like money.
It's money. So this is coming straight to the board, but I'm comfortable bringing it straight to the board because it's all about grants. So Melissa's here to give us some background on what this one is.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. This is more of an administrative action. We applied for about $1 million to support a interconnection down in Murrieta with Rancho California Water District through the Prop 1 Integrated Regional Water Management Planning Grant through the Department of Water Resources. Western was selected as one of those awarded projects. Now, with the Integrated Regional Water Management Planning process, there's an agency that heads up for that region. For example, for the Santa Ana River, that's SAPA, and for the Santa Margarita Upper Shed Watershed, that is Rancho California. So DWR does the agreement with Rancho, and then Rancho has to do a subgrantee agreement with any agency that would receive an award, which is Western. So here, we're bringing this to the board with, no minor changes that come from the final agreement, but an agreement with Rancho to receive these funds of $1 million for interconnection. And I'm
Okay.
available for
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions?
Yeah, does anyone have questions?
Nope, I move the item.
Second, but I do have a question.
Oops. Laura?
So, I noticed that the project costs are estimated to be almost $4 million, and I wasn't clear. I see there's a matching, there's the grant amount, there's a matching, and then an additional cost share, and I wasn't sure where that was coming from, the additional.
Do you want me to take that, or? Okay, so any additional budget will be coming back to the board, but this project is still in design, so this would likely feed into the next CIFP process.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Is there a motion? We have a motion, I believe.
And I made a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Tammy, would you please take the roll call?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstedt?
Aye.
Director Risby?
Yes.
Director Roten?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And then 8B, Melissa, you don't get to go away. Craig, would you like to introduce it?
Melissa, we need to adopt a resolution designating authorized agents for another grant. Melissa, you want to give us the background on this one too?
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually a grant that we applied for on behalf of RCRA back in 2021. This is for the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant. It actually takes that long to get a grant award from them, so that's why we're coming back here now. RCRA was successful in receiving this grant fund of a little under $1 million, which does represent about 75% of the project costs. You will see in the board packet, you have RCRA's resolution to apply and authorizing the RCRA administrator as the authorized agent. FEMA wants Western to do the same thing and again allow Craig, the general manager, and then the RCRA administrator to authorize and become an approval agent for this grant. Approval agent just means that they're going to be the ones signing the invoices, making sure the progress reports get done, and doing any amendments. So that's kind of the authority that they have to do, which is typical with any grant. So again, this is more of just an administrative action.
I have a quick question.
Please.
So I just did this exact same thing. I know one thing that Cal OES allows is to designate a title.
We're doing titles
Is that
only.
what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. So move.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Sure.
Just a question, I noticed, so it's agenda page 172, that the approval date shows the 19th day of April, and is that because it still has to go like to RCRA or something, or?
I think this was originally going to go to the April 19th board after going to EOWR this last week. So the approval date would be changed to today if you guys adopt
Today?
it.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Good catch. Okay, any other discussion, questions? If not, would you please call the roll? Sure.
Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 8D is we need to confirm Western's representatives to the Chino Basin Water Master.
We
C?
can do that in a
Whoops.
minute.
Yeah, let's do C.
We could do C in the meantime.
We could. Sorry.
So Derek's here to.
Cutting Derek off.
Brief us again. This is something that came to engineering committee some time ago, but this is the way that we should operate. There's an entity that needs brine line capacity. There's brine line capacity available, and this is an agreement to transfer that capacity. So Derek, could you give us the details?
Sure. So this item was brought before the engineering committee in January. It's for authorizing brine line capacity rights to be transferred between Dairy Farmers of America and Dart Container. The parties to the agreement have been working out the details of the language between then and now, and all parties have reached agreement, and that agreement is in the staff letter package. As background, The Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority, or SAPA, operates the brine line. The brine line capacity allows industry to legally and properly dispose of wastewater with a high concentration of salts. The disposed of wastewater travels about 30 miles down to the Orange County Sanitation District on the coast, where they treat it and deposit it safely in the ocean. In this case, Dairy Farmers of America has excess capacity that they are no longer using. DART operates a styrofoam cup manufacturing plant in the city of Corona. DART already has 0.03 million gallons of capacity, gallons per day, of capacity in the brine line, and they want to expand their operations. The proposal is for DFA to sell another 0.03 million gallons per day of capacity to DART. SAPA requires that any transfer of the capacity be approved by the agency that oversees the brine line capacity. In this case, Western has to approve the transfer. Western is not a party to the sale agreement, though. The request is to, number one, approve the general manager to execute an agreement regarding the assignment and assumption of Inland Empire brine line discharge capacity rights between Dairy Farmers of America, DART Container, and Western Municipal Water District. And also, it does allow for the general manager to make non-material changes to execute the said agreement. We do have a lot of interest in this particular one. You'll see online there's a number of people from DART Container: Sandra Ormond, Ivan Marquez, Ed Rhodes, and Tin Montez. And also from DFA, we have Dermot O'Brien. We're all available to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, are there questions from board members?
So move.
Do any of the folks online wish to say anything? Seems like not. I would look then for a motion.
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not. Tammy, when you're ready, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Denstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay,
Good job, Derek.
yeah, thanks, Derek. Okay, now we'll go back to representatives to Chino Basin Water Masters Advisory Committee.
Okay, so we became aware from Watermaster that there was an opening on the advisory committee at Chino Basin Water Master. So we think it's appropriate that we place someone on that committee, Western place someone on that committee. Director Roten serves as the backup to Chino Basin Water Master, and I think it's appropriate that she take that seat. We would have a backup of a staff person if Director Roten's not available to participate. So the reason it's on the agenda today is because we need to add that to our matrix and to get the board's approval of the matrix. So that's the action, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I would just point out this is a non-voting position on the advisory committee. So you get to talk and ask questions and express opinions, but you don't have a vote.
What do they do? Give recommendations to the actual board?
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. Chino Basin Water Master is organized by the court with 3 pools, they call them. There's an overlying agricultural pool, an overlying non-agricultural pool, industry basically, and then what they call the appropriative pool, which is the water agencies that take water and distribute it to customers. And they advise the advisory committee. The advisory committee advises the 9-member Water Master Board.
Okay.
Move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, could we please have a roll call?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Denstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, we come to reports. General Counsel, Mr. Ballinger.
I have none, thank you.
Thank you.
General Manager.
I do have some.
Good.
Let's start off with, you all have a card in front of you, I think. The California Water for All is the campaign to support our legislative effort, which is SB 366 by Caballero. So this is CMUA's bill to develop or set targets for the state to develop 15 million acre feet of new water supply by the year 2050, and to modernize the California Water Plan, and to articulate to DWR that in statute, DWR is to come back to the legislature and report on their progress towards achieving that goal. So please distribute this card. We are looking for supporters, obviously. We need everybody to support this. And as you've heard me say, this is legislation to force the state to do long-term water supply planning. That's what we do here at Western. That's what Metropolitan does. We all do it. We need to have the state do the same thing. So please be advocates for that as we as that moves along. Good news on the county level. So we applied for a grant to add more fire hydrants into our rural areas. And this is something we're in compliance with fire code, but we feel like we could do better and have more fire hydrants and more access for the fire department. So we had applied to the county for a grant, and it was just announced that we got a $2 million ARPA award to install 100 additional fire hydrants within Supervisory Division 2. So that's great news, and something that we've wanted to do for a long time and haven't had the money to do. So thank you very much to the supervisor for going and advocating for that to happen. It's great news for our customers. Update on SARCUP, and we heard a lot about that at the Engineering Committee. The next SARCUP funded project is well number 7, which we have also heard about the construction of this well. We've been waiting for it to kick off, and they are going to start construction next Monday.
Yay.
Yay. We are, we've met with the city, and we continue to alert our board members that sometimes there's a lot of noise that comes with drilling a well, and there's also going to be some discharge water that's going to be going down the street, and it's required as you develop a well to discharge and, clean out the sediments from the well. So we've met with the city to explain that. Sarah and her team has done a huge amount of outreach. We've done door hangers. We will have signs out there. We are trying to make sure that we take responsibility for that project and not leave that on the lap of our city council people in Riverside. So they've all been made aware to turn all those calls over to us, and we'll handle all the outreach. So that's really great news that is starting, and that's going to be in the parking lot of the Magnolia Presbyterian Church on Magnolia Avenue.
Yay.
So that's good news that we're going on that.
That's your division, right, Director?
Yes.
Gardner?
And actually, this, not only is there a water benefit here, but that church had a fire that destroyed their new sanctuary. And they're not a wealthy congregation. And the money that Western is paying them for the little corner of their parking lot where this well will go was the last bit they needed to fund reconstruction of their sanctuary. So it's multi-benefit.
That's awesome.
Okay. Next reminder for the board, we've got an event coming up. So on April 20th is the Western Riverside County reception for MWD Chairman Adon Ortega. So we're looking forward to that. That's a joint event with Western and Eastern. And so we're looking forward to that. The chairman will be there to share his vision and his priorities, and we're looking forward to welcoming him to our area. So BB&K has very generously offered to help sponsor that event.
Great.
And we are sharing those costs and the planning with Eastern, and that's going extremely well. and we are really looking forward to that event, and we hope you are all going to be there.
How many guests do we expect?
10,000? No, I don't. Sarah, would you? have
I
you-
can share with you that our invitation list has upwards of 350. We do have capacity of about 200, and so far our RSVP list is going strong. We've sent out additional reminders this weekend. Do have a cutoff date so we can secure all the things that the event requires. So we do encourage those that would like to attend to RSVP as soon as possible.
That was my question.
My last update is that we have a date, May 20th, for what we're now calling Waterworks Wonders. You may have called it the open house in the past, but we're branding this as a water event rather than an open house.
There better be snow. If I hear wonders, I'm expecting a snow slide.
Well, I don't know in May if we can promise that, but maybe we can show pictures of when it snowed here a couple of weeks ago. But we're really looking forward to that, and the directors, I think, may have gotten a little bit of a preview on Monday of some of the activities that the different teams here at Western are going to be presenting at that event. But Sarah and her team is working really hard on making that event happen and getting the invites out. And we certainly encourage the board members to work really hard to get people here to enjoy Western and see what we're proud of, what we accomplished for our customers.
It'll be here? Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
Is there food? And are there free giveaways? That's the draw for the crowds.
We are pleased to announce that the In-N-Out truck will be on site, so we
Oh,
expect that to
we
be
need
a
to put
great
that
draw
out there.
for our community, and we will have giveaways along with a kids zone. And as our general manager mentioned, this event really is a testament to the internal collaboration we have here at Western Water. So all teams are coming together to offer engaging interactive booths, and we're going to have a variety of different activities for both adults and the kiddos as well.
Awesome. And the frog will be present.
Yes.
Right.
Fantastic, thank you.
That concludes the general manager's comments, but Melissa is part of the general manager comments. She's up here all the time talking about all these different grants, and so we wanted to give her an opportunity to kind of summarize what we've achieved, and it's pretty impressive. So, Melissa?
Thank you. Yeah, we typically bring updates every 6 months, but I know that we are applying every month, with resolutions, and I know you guys are probably pretty anxious to know how we're doing on that, so we're gonna actually bring this to you on a quarterly update process. And we've also, in addition to the PowerPoint, attached a new kind of summary sheet that you guys should see in your board packet that will also be provided that highlights a little bit more details about the grants and who's funding them and what type of funding it is and how much and what status they are in. So we'll get started. So our summary, $151 million, let's just start there, right? That's a pretty good number. That's what our grant process has been like since 2013. We have our current and awarded grants of $52 million, $55 million of just submitted applications we haven't heard back from, and then $43 million of the completed projects. And you can see here also in the table what are loans. So we have the SRF loan of that $35 million there under completed, but the rest, are grants. And so this kind of gives us a good use to look at and compare with maybe our other agencies that might have really high numbers, but ours are really high in the grant category, and that's something to really be aware of in terms of our efforts. And then something else that we want to look at is just kind of awarded grant dollars by funder type, federal, state, and then local. You can see here that we have a lot in the state funds, but our federal funds are also really high here, especially with our current and awards. And then you can see here over time how many awarded dollars have happened, how many applications we're actually putting out. So prior to 2020, it was maybe 1 or 2 applications a year, and now it's 7 to 12. I'm working on 6 right now, just for this month. So you can see that the effort has really increased, and we're getting a lot out there, and we're seeing the fruition of the work that we've put into this. So here I just kind of pulled out some of the tables that are in that handout for you. And just some things to see is that we have this new reference ID. Over here on the left, this is so, you guys can always track, and we'll start putting them into the resolutions for you, so you can see, hey, what happened to that resolution? Oh, I can see where it's at here. It's by the date of the application that we were working on, so it's, the year, the month, and then the number of applications maybe done in that month. So, if you see 3, that was the 3rd application done, or 1, that was the 1st application. So that way we can kind of track it through its grant life cycle and be able to make sure that, we're meeting all the compliance that we need to as well. And then here are our recent awards, and I'm even happy to say that there's more recent awards here than when this was published. So for example, the update from Craig is not here because that kind of came about in a 3-week time span. So this wasn't updated here yet. So these numbers are actually higher. And then, of course, our submitted applications, working on even more submitted applications for you. But we have about $55 million of outstanding applications that hopefully we will hear back from. And, not greedy, even half would be amazing. So hopefully we'll hear back some great news here.
Melissa, let me interrupt. Go back a slide.
Yeah.
So you'll see on here the applications that the Supervisor Spiegel ARPA funding was for $1 million, and she herself decided to go and increase it to $2 million. So that was positive. She thought very highly of the rural hydrant project.
Thank you, yeah. And then, we are constantly looking out on the horizon in terms of new applications being submitted and what projects that we're going to be working on. So we have this time frame for just really the next 6 months in terms of the efforts. But, we're looking at projects for fleet upgrades. There'll be a new release of Applied Sciences, which we're looking at for GIS and some data projects there. New drought resiliency, which Western has been successful in getting funding for, that we're looking to apply. The defense communities, which we have been successful previously, we're going to be applying again. Water Smart, and then, of course, FEMA. So these are just some of the projects that we're looking to apply. Not all of them will come to fruition, but these are ones that we are really looking at and making sure that they're going to be high-quality projects that can meet the deliverables and meet the goals of the funding agency. And so, again, very strategic and looking far out as much as we can in terms of making sure that we can align grant cycles with Western's internal cycles. And, again, bringing this to the board and coming out quarterly with these new updates is really what we're trying to do to highlight that transparency and financial stewardship, as well as with the amount, the superior service and resource management. So I'm available for any questions.
Great.
Thank you,
Any
Melissa.
questions for Dr. Matlock?
I just want to say, great job, Dr. Matlock, and I loved this presentation. I love seeing footnotes in presentations, and so this was very well done and very, very good job. It's setting a very high standard for the grants that we receive in this area.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, just outstanding work, and congratulations, and thank you. And all our customers, thank you.
Thank you.
I will add a little bit of a general manager perspective on that. It's awesome how successful we are on grants, but the backside of the grants is we now have to build all the projects and spend the money. And I will be coming back to the board with a couple of staffing requests that are necessary to follow through on all of these grants. So that'll be coming shortly in the future here. And it's a good position to be in.
Double-edged sword, right?
It's a double-edged sword, but if you look at it, it allows us to bring in more expertise on the back of other people's money. And so it allows us to build our team, and we want to make sure we perform on these grants. It's our credibility with our legislators and everyone else that helps us get these grants. We do not want to not spend the money.
Exactly.
It is an elite workforce.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's
Okay.
it for me.
Thank you. Brings us to directors' reports and requests. First is the SAPA Commission. I've got a couple of meetings to fill you in on that. The March 21st meeting, the SAPA Commission voted to incorporate the Orange County and Riverside County stormwater resource plans by reference in an appendix to the One Water, One Watershed Plan update. That's really just kind of a formality, but it is an important step that needs to happen. Director Denstedt is our representative to that subgroup, the One Water, One Watershed, or OWOW.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we, as Western, applying for any of the SWRP money? Do we have any projects?
Yes, but we didn't elevate quite high enough on the matrix and score above. So there's a portion of money, those projects are the ones to go. If there's additional monies, then there will be an additional round of which our projects put us in that position.
So we weren't selected, but we applied?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The commission also adopted its fiscal year-end 24-25 budget. Then it met again yesterday, and actually it was a complicated meeting. There are project agreement committees. Project Agreement 23 Committee oversees the SARCUP program. It approved support of the Interagency Operating Committee Agreement, which is the last step in getting SARCUP, or the last administrative step in getting SARCUP finishing. And then the commission authorized the general manager to send a letter of support for Assembly Bill 1567 by Assemblymember Garcia. This will morph into ultimately a legislative proposal for a water bond measure. It's focusing on watershed resiliency, and at Western's request, rather than just say watershed resiliency, we put in some samples of the sorts of water areas that should be included in that, and that would include things like improving water quality, stormwater capture, desalination, just in general, both, it could include both ocean and groundwater. So those sorts of things, we got that language in, and it's not intended to exclude anything, it's only intended to include a few things. We'll see how much money ends up being in this bond proposal, assuming that it comes through the legislature. It would be on the 2024 ballot if it goes all the way through. And then the PA 23 committee, or I'm sorry, 24 committee, which oversees the brine line that we discussed a little earlier, just issued some ongoing contracts for maintenance and emergency response. And it's essentially contractors can be called on if you need to drain the line or clean up a spill or any of those sorts of things. So those RFPs will be going out, and SAPA will be hiring some folks to assist if we have a problem. And that's it for SAPA. Our next one, get to the right sheet again. Yeah, Metropolitan.
Next week.
Okay. Chino Basin Water Master did meet last, where am I here? Okay, here we go. Did meet end of last month, and really the only real action was to issue or approve the third amendment to a task order under the master agreement for collaborative recharge projects and specifically the San Savine Basin. There are a series of water recharge systems in the Chino Basin area. They have more than we do because they have more inflow into an area where you can recharge, and they overlie aquifers that we don't. So you see more of this over there than here. And then they adopted a Water Master Board philosophy about staffing and compensation for employees. The significant thing is, they didn't say it quite this way, but they want to be more like Western in how they regard their employees. And they have a goal of paying their employees in general at a rate 5% above the region average. That was it for Watermaster. Back to my right list here, Chino Desalter Authority. Okay, RCRA.
RCRA and SRAB both will meet later in this month, so.
Okay, WRCOG.
Yes. We had a meeting on Monday. There was the biggest line of discussion, because a lot of it was on consent, and there were some reports getting ready for General Assembly. But WRCOG has adopted for the first time an actual strategic plan. So that's going to be an interesting document. Water is in that document. We made sure of that. So we're going to see how that is a working document and how it moves forward for a strategic plan to give us some focus and some guidance to follow what we have determined to be the mission, the vision, and the purpose as we move forward with shaping that more clearly defined role within the region. And that is all I have.
Okay, Aqua, right back to you.
Aqua, so we had a couple of things that happened over this last couple of weeks. The Ledge Symposium was held up in Sacramento for that. It was a little bit different a format than I've experienced in the past. There, we had panels of discussions and not as many legislators that joined us during that luncheon and that kind of briefing and whatnot. So I was a little bit more hopeful that we would have some of those state folks come and have conversation and give us more direct dialogue. A lot of conversation that has taken place, though, and was a really large focus of that, and jump in anytime if I'm missing this, but water rights and all of the bills that are coming out on water rights and the discussions of water rights. So there's a lot of discussion going on and a lot of concern, and of course, every agency has a different perspective, so it's like herding cats in water.
Yeah.
So, and then we had the Salton Sea Tour, very, very good tour that was hosted by the Region 9 Board. It was very informative. They had some fantastic speakers that were at that. It gave a very well-rounded view of what the Salton Sea is, what our challenges are, why it's critical to our region, why we should care about it, and what it means to, obviously, the desert agencies. Coachella Valley Water District were gracious enough to lend their facilities for a drop point and a pickup point, so it was wonderful of them to join part of that. We got to go out and share, if you've not been out there, they have a site location out on the Salton Sea that's called the Yacht Club. So some people who have never been out to the Salton Sea to go and see the Yacht Club were a little, we'll call it surprised. So it's very entertaining to be out there, and it was a very good turnout. I know we had a waiting list for that tour, so maybe perhaps again we'll have that in the future, but great speakers that one of my colleagues on the Region 9 board, Patrick O'Dowd, brought in some very well-versed individuals who have been a part of the negotiations and a part of the transfers with IID from Brownstein, and just really, really good tour. And I had colleagues that joined me on that tour, so perhaps they have some things and insight to share when it's director's comments, but and then I think that's all I have for Aqua. We do have the spring conference is coming up, so we'll be attending that here shortly, and there are a couple of other Aqua project tours and things that are out there and available. Some of them are online, some of them are in person. And then we're going to start working on our next Region 9 project and tour of what that's going to be and what it'll look like. So more to come on that, but it'll be several months down the road.
Did the tour include, by chance, looking at any of the geothermal plants?
So we got to go, and actually we had one of the speakers that came from one of those areas, and we actually got to go out there and look at the mud pots,
Oh, yeah.
which was fascinating to go and see. I took a little bit of a video. We were very cautious walking around. But yeah, it was very interesting. So we went really quickly. It was a very, very long, packed day. And I wish there were some areas of focus that we could have had just a little bit more on in order for us to have some more questions. But it did give us some insight of where we could go the next time and what we could focus on to be a little bit different.
Great. Thank you.
Does the Aqua just do tours and trips, or is there any like policy that comes out of there, aside from the strategic plan?
Oh, no, Aqua does sponsor and push legislation forward. So there's an entire government affairs and communications, and there's a lot of committees and different things. So, but one of the things that Region 9 wants to do is we want to focus on what our local agencies are doing and what we have to offer, because we had people come from outside of the area, from Aqua, other regions, to see what we were doing and what our agencies are doing within our region to see if they can mimic it or if it's something beneficial to them. So it's really more of that part of it is more of an education of sharing what is working and to allow people to collaborate and try to move those projects to see what happens in other areas.
Great. Okay, director's comments.
Can I add something to the Aqua report? They did take a support position on SB 366.
Excellent.
Yes.
And President Gardner, we do need the Sorrel report.
Yeah. It kind of got lumped into RCRA. Director Torres, do you have comments?
Yes. I just want to say that I want to start with, it was a rough weekend, so I want to send my condolences to the family and friends and children of Captain Tim Strack, who we lost way too quickly. He was a really good friend of mine, a mentor and somebody that knew how to give advice when it was needed, and just be an overall friend. And so I'm sure a lot of us are heartbroken over that. He was a true hero and leader in the city as well as in the state. And of course to his members, and I send my heart to the association who's lost a tremendous president. I hope we can adjourn the meeting in his honor.
That's the plan.
Yeah. And then aside from that, this is kind of good news. For those that travel to 91, they can start witnessing the painting of the new mural, started this week. So for the next 6 weeks, you can see the time lapse of what it'll look like as it's being painted. And then this weekend, I attended the WELL Conference, which was probably one of the best WELL conferences I've attended in the last 5 years. There was, I think they're doing them semi-annually, but there was a lot of conversation about conservation, groundwater management, municipalities and municipal water and special districts, and how they are addressing all the changes and all the variety that's happening, or whiplash that's happening with the weather. It was probably one of the best we had, and it happened to be a special weekend because we were commemorating Cesar Chavez, and they had Dolores Huerta there give an update or give their views on the importance of water, especially as we see these farm workers being inundated, unable to work, and really hurt from these storms. And so that was really incredible. She's one of my idols, and so it was incredible to get to spend some time with her and talk about what I love the most. So that was a great probably one of the best, and they'll be having their 10th year anniversary very soon, so I hope, we were sponsors, so I hope we can continue to be, it was, like I said, probably one of the best, and it's probably because Western was participated, so. And then I'm just excited to announce at the end of this month, I've been asked to speak alongside Adan Ortega and Marco Tule, both chairmen of their respective water districts, as well as Edison, on a sustainability summit in Pomona. And so I hope you will consider attending and being part of that. It's going to be a great conversation with water leaders and experts, but really catered towards sustainability and energy and water. So that's it. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you. Director Roden.
Yes, I just wanted to mention the Salton Sea trip. It was everything I had hoped and more. Just as Director Denstedt was talking, just different things popped into my head. Those mud pots were a bit intimidating, and they looked like little volcanoes, and the mud was like gurgling up. And then once you stood there, you could hear it, and then, of course, I'm looking down at where I'm standing thinking, what's going to happen here? But, so those were fascinating. Also, the thing that kept coming back to me was the bathtub ring as we were heading east out through the Coachella Valley from Lake Cahuilla that I never knew flooded every 500 years. And so the Native American tribes would move up into the mountains when it would flood, and then it would take like a couple hundred years to recede. And you can see, I'm always curious about things that you see in rock, like those lines, and I always wonder, what caused that? Didn't think about it being a lake was up that deep. So that was really interesting. I mean, there were just so many things that just really struck me, but those two for sure. And then also, just on a personal note, I had gone to the Salton Sea probably, I'm going to say, a good 5 years ago, and my husband and I were headed out to Yuma, so we went out on one side, and then when we came back on the other side, and definitely the water level is lower than even when I was there. And one of our stops had all these bales of hay, it looked like down on what looks like the beach. And I wasn't sure if that was artwork, but it wasn't. They are planting where the sea is receding. They're planting to try to keep the dust and all that down, bring back the habitat. And those bales of hay are like windbreaks to help keep the plants. We had a gorgeous day, but it does get, I guess, very windy out there. And so it was a high-quality tour. I've been on, years ago, on one of the Met tours of the Colorado River Aqueduct. This was as high caliber as that was, and the amount of information and the variety of information. Scott Slater did a presentation at one of our stops about the Colorado River, and I got to learn a little more. He's the attorney for Chino Basin Watermaster. Got to learn a little more about him. So he has quite an amazing background.
Yes.
So it was just lovely and informative, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the only other comment I want to make is I'd like to follow up, Craig, with you and whoever you deem, hopefully Melissa, to find out. Our Monday morning group is going back to Washington, D.C. at the end of this month. And what I learned when we went in September for our advocating trip was Randy Record, who is an amazing guy, and I had never spent that amount of time with him, but he and I were sort of paired together as part of the water committee. When we went in to see a legislator, he would thank them specifically for their role in certain grants that Eastern had received. And I tucked that away because I thought, that is something I need to find out so that when we're visiting with these different appointments, that you start out with an appreciation like that, it just it sets the tone for the meeting. So I'll circle back with you all at some point on that. But, and thank you, Melissa, for these grants are incredible. And I hope that our ratepayers realize what's being done on their behalf to offset costs, because it really is. I mean, I don't know that you guys have compared yourselves to any other agency, but my guess is we are way at the top. So thank you again for that. And that's it.
Okay. Director Denstedt.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I wanted to take a step back. So one of Laura's comments on the hay bales, it was such an impressive sight. I thought, wow, are they setting up for like Stagecoach out here to hold a concert? And this is going to be the seating area, because it literally could have had a stage set with this huge venue. I mean, because it went for hundreds of yards. So it was quite an impressive sight, now that you reminded me of that. So thank you. I also wanted to take a moment too and say a thank you to Adon Ortega, the chair of Metropolitan Water District, who came out and met with our agency and met with our board just a couple of weeks ago. We had some very good conversations. We shared what our agency is about and what we're working on, and he had a lot of questions for us. And so I really wanted to make sure that we acknowledged that he came out here to spend that time with us, and really appreciate him hearing what we have and what Western is doing as an agency in its whole. So thank you to that. And then having a conversation with one of my colleagues from Eastern that sits on WRCOG. We talked about our two agencies coming up. They're doing a lot of ledge updates right now, but WRCOG is really focused on a lot of housing issues, and so we want to make sure that water doesn't drop off of the radar over there. So perhaps we could coordinate with them to do a little bit of a add to their discussion line of what the city should be concerned about and what was going to affect them in the long haul with some of these bills that we have hesitation over, and why we have hesitation over them. So I just want to make sure that we add to the mix with that. And then the other one that's really at a high point with them is, they're really focusing on this whole Norco thing with the manure. I have to tell you, it's been a real joy to talk about with that bill that they're trying to hit horse owners with. So just saying. And then wanted to thank staff for the new pins that we have that shows our new logo and what we've got going on. So appreciate that. But I have an ask. So if on these pins, if one of the orders could contain something that doesn't actually have a pin and has a magnet, so some of our stuff that we wear isn't work with that, and I'd really like to wear it. So just kind of an ask. And then I wanted to let everybody know that the second longest running event in Riverside County is going to be happening in Marietta with the Marietta Fireman's Barbecue. That's going to be taking place on April the 15th. They're expecting a potential of 8,000 to 10,000 people to attend this event. It is a huge event, and they've had to change the venue to the outdoor amphitheater location, and they've got a lot of vendors going. So I don't know if we have a booth or staff are going to attend, but it certainly is an opportunity to partner with some of those agencies down there to talk and share water stuff. So just wanted to put a shout out there. And with that, Mr. President, that will conclude my comments today. Thank you.
Director Risti.
All right. Regarding Aquator, it was excellent. It was kudos to the staff of the information, the spots that we stopped at. It was very informative. It was my first time at the Salton Sea, so it was really, really a learning experience. What all you guys mentioned was really great, but what I was very interested in how the geothermal plants are now looking at lithium and how it could be the future of how energy is, and especially as we are moving into EV and what's going on with our, at the state. So I thought that was very interesting of what's being done, what's happening, and how we can, what's happening there. So great tour. I look forward to more tours like that. Aqua did a great job, so we appreciate all of that. It was a tough week for me personally. I lost my father last week from there. I had to travel to Atlanta, and I lost my father, and he was a great man, well-lived, and we will keep it in my prayers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I get the sad part here. I would like to adjourn our meeting in honor of Director Rizvi's father, Huzur Al-Hussan Siddiqui. I never got the chance to meet him, but I can see through you and your family what he means. And so, I also would like to adjourn our meeting in memory and honor of Captain Tim Strack. Tim was a friend of mine. I've known him for, more than 20 years. It's my belief he made more difference in Riverside's fire department over the last 20 years than any other individual. When I was on the Riverside City Council, I worked with Tim to get staffing on fire apparatus from 3 firefighters back up to 4, which really is a minimum. There's a rule that if you are sending firefighters into a structure that is on fire, that there have to be minimum of 2 have to go in and a minimum of 2 have to be out to rescue them if need be. And if you have just a 3-person engine respond, unless you know that someone is trapped in that building, you don't get to send anybody inside. You can't start an interior attack. You can't do a search until a second apparatus arrives and you've got 4 firefighters on scene. And Tim was instrumental in getting that done. He was instrumental in improving training and equipment for Riverside City firefighters, and actually statewide. He was not just the president of the Riverside City Firefighters Association for 21 years. He was in the elected leadership of the California Professional Firefighters, based out of Sacramento. And Tim was, he was instrumental in getting better working conditions, better equipment, better training, improved safety for firefighters. And partly due to the work that Tim did, Riverside has only had 1 on-duty firefighter death in the history of its department. Of course, Tim wasn't there back in the 1800s when the department started, but he helped drive the safety programs and the training that have helped the Riverside Department have that kind of a safety record. And that 1 on-duty death was not due to an accident. The firefighter had a heart attack while working a fire. So it wasn't directly safety-related in any way. I served for 10 years with Tim on the State Seismic Safety Commission. He was appointed by Governor Brown and reappointed by Governor Brown and served 2 years of Governor Newsom's time as government. He served for 2 years as chair of the commission and was the best chair that I got to work with in my time there. As Gracie said, he's a huge loss to our city, to our region. certainly to his family. And he's going to be greatly missed. He's just really a good guy. So when we come back from closed session, we will adjourn in honor of Captain Strack and Mr. Siddiqui. But that will be post-closed session, and most people will be gone, so we'll do the talking now. And with that, we will break for a closed session.
President Gardner, can we take, we'll need at least 5 minutes to set up for the closed session.
Sure.
So if we want to take a 5 or a 10-minute break, that would be great.
Okay, we'll take 10.
Ted?
Sure.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we are ready to return, or we have returned from closed session, and we'll turn it to General Counsel for a report.
Yes, Mr. President and board members, members of the public, the board met in closed session to discuss the two items that are listed on the agenda. There was no reportable action. The record should reflect that Board Member Torres had to leave toward the end of the discussion of the second item.
Thank you. We will then, at this point, adjourn as we discussed previously in honor of Mr. Siddiqui and Fire Captain Tim Strack. Adjourned.
I did. Thank you very much, Director.